Parry Talks. Welcome back. Episode 11.
Hello, good sir.
He's interrupted the intro.
Sorry.
No. Very special guest today for a whole multitude of reasons. The first one being probably like my most special guest I reckon I could ever have on this podcast. I could interview Tyler, the Creator, my ultimate idol, and this would still be more special because the first article I got published, the first interview I ever did was with this man. And for it to go full circle now, you know, you were playing fucking churches back then, and now you're playing borderline arenas, and it's come full circle. Now I'm doing a podcast in a pub, so we're here. Ziggy Alberts, how are you, my kind sir?
I am very well, thank you, Parry. It's nice after all the years. I feel like that was Paddington, was the church?
Yeah, just after that show.
Yeah, that's I actually just went past there just like 2 days ago.
Wow.
I was just next door getting food, and I looked and I was like, I'm pretty sure I used to play that church back in the day. So no, it has come. It's definitely very nice to come full circle, and very cool to see Parry Talks come to life. I knew this was a bit of a concept.
Yeah, I did. Did I mention it to you like years ago? Probably.
Yeah, and I knew that was something that you wanted to like pursue, but it was kind of, but when I saw that it kind of come out and the interviews you've been doing with Triple One and stuff like that, I was like, it was nice to see you kind of. I felt like you jumped in straight into it, you know.
Yeah, I wasn't
in the
messing
deep end
about.
of the pool, so that's I thought that was really cool.
Exactly. Well, you're in Sydney. Where were you on Saturday? What's going on there? Talk me through it.
Well, Saturday, I just so happened I got a call from one of the guys at Patagonia, and they said, hey, Saturday's going to be a national day of action. We're going to hold these paddle outs to protest against the proposed drilling in the Great Australian Bight. And I just so happened, I was like, yeah, well, actually I'm going to be in Sydney, and they had one at Bondi, and I was staying in Bondi, so it just couldn't have been better. I'm here just for the week, you know, where it's Monday and the first show
Tuesday,
of tour starts.
Tuesday.
Is it Tuesday?
You're already behind the
For
eight
real?
ball. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's so 3 days until the first show of tour, and so we usually keep this week for like press, and I might have performance and stuff like that. But it was really cool to kind of be able to go drag some people down to Bondi and just get numbers. I think we had over like 1,000 people down at Bondi, which is a really big turnout. There might have been over 10,000 surfers across Australia, you know, on 50-something paddle outs, and that's and I saw a post today from a guy called Heath Josky, who's one of the Patagonia ambassadors, and he's been going around the world, and he's a fairly like, I'd say like you're almost like quintessential blokey Australian, you know, big beard and everything like that, so he's a really great, well-spoken, he doesn't come across like your full hippie, so people will listen to him who aren't necessarily open to the ideas. And anyway, he put up this post this morning of a paddle out in the Northern Territory, like croc country kind of thing, and so that shows you how committed people are to and I think that's really beautiful. I feel like everyone's coming together on a lot of different things right now with the fires that are happening, with stuff like the Great Australian Bight and the proposed drilling there. It's in these times that you see that people do actually want to come together. I think that's something we could just practice more, and without there being issues, without a reason. You know, when something goes wrong, we come together. You know, that's like I think an observation of like human nature, and it'd just be nice if we remember that and come together for, which we do. We do with music, we do with art, we do with we do with a lot of things already. But it's a good reminder, or that's what I see the positivity out of these things. You wish you weren't having to protest, but what's cool is that you see everyone kind of just puts their stuff aside and comes together. So
yeah, there's definitely a point to have on being proactive other than reactive.
Yes.
But it's got to a point now where we have no choice other than to be reactive, given the climate, given like the political climate that we are in.
Yes.
So even though it's like good to say, well, we should be more proactive, it's like it's hard to because of how far over the edge I think we are.
Yeah, I think it's I think kind of something, I think people are cottoning onto it in the sense that there's been for the last couple of years a lot of sharing and expression through social media, and that's really good, really good for making the public and making making the world aware. But I think what's even more important, which is starting to happen more and more, is that people turn up to the protest, people sign the petitions, people write the letter, because that's the stuff that counts within the court of law, you know. They don't, as much as they should for a social indicative, they should take into account, like when, for example, when this all first blew up with the Great Australian Bight proposed drilling, like there might have been like 14,000 comments they actually not had on one post. Trouble is, politicians don't care. Like it's not like they can go, oh yeah, there was this much engagement on this post. They don't
check the analytics.
Yeah. Oh, look at these analytics. And secondly, that they hit the post or
Exactly.
hit the comments, and so we have been. I feel like a lot of the energy got shifted into like putting it into social media, but the energy you put into social media, it kind of just is like it's its own little circular thing. And like, I think it's a really good way for people to put a lot of energy into something without it affecting the actual political situation. And so I think that the information being shared, and like, for example, like these paddle outs being made, people are aware of them because of social media, like fantastic. And then it's the people turning up and the numbers being there and the people signing those petitions. That's what counts in the court of law, and that's what counts politically. And so, I think that, again, all of this, like the situation that's at hand now has really ignited people on a lot of front, and united people on a lot of front. People are very aware on a lot of different ages and demographics now. So I think that there is always some good that comes with it, if you choose to see it or if you choose to participate in it. There's a lot of good that comes through, and I think that we have probably as caring and active Australia as we ever have, because we have to.
Exactly.
But that's great. That's great. I love seeing the crew, like Horror Show, for example, like they're into their human rights activism, and that's something that I could never speak to their demographic of fans, their core fans. I couldn't speak to them about that because they have like the respect of their crew that come to shows. Like they have this really and that's what we need, everyone in their different corners, and finding like what is their way,
like their voice
way. Because it's not for everybody, I don't believe. I don't think that everyone should endeavor to be like
an
activist or like a blonde to care. You don't have to be a blonde hippie surfer, swimming with dolphins kind of thing. You don't have to fit that mold. And I think that there is like activism needed in a lot of different areas, and we all should really listen, because one's not better than the other. If something's like, if animal welfare is like the thing for you, like that's what you should pursue, because we need not that people kind of just follow the trend. We need people to like listen to what is their passion and what they most care about, because that's when I think they can give the most to those issues.
And I think one thing that social media has done for me, or for artists, for anyone really, is accessibility on these issues. You sort of hinted at it as well. This isn't something that I would have known about if I hadn't followed certain people, I'd know I could be a part of if I didn't, have access to these social media spaces. So I think in that sense, social media is really good, because it just helps with the accessibility of any sort of political issue.
Yes.
But then there's the issue with echo chambers and that sort of thing, which makes people super complacent in actually performing activism. Because even though in your comment section, everyone may be like, yeah, fuck, this is awesome, good work, Ziggy, and stuff. It's like, it can give you a sort of like a complacency. It's like, look at all these people, like I don't need to do anything, because everyone in this little echo chamber is happy with that level of, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. It's like there's even, I believe, some social studies been done around, for example, like the difference between if there is a group of people when something goes down, in the sense of if there is like a car crash and there's a group of people, everybody kind of looks at each other. Yeah. And like, no, it's like a very strange like human reaction, whereas when it is one or two people or three people, it is everybody acts really quickly.
Exactly.
And I think that's and so that's a really good way. I didn't really think of that phrase, but like there is an echo chamber effect. But that is up to us to see through.
Exactly.
So I couldn't agree more. I think what social media has done and is doing is like really incredible. It's free access to information, and information gets spread really quickly around the world. And from that, we should try and form our opinions and views, and be curious, and then participate in the realm that that counts politically.
Exactly.
You know? Not just politically, but counts for your community, because, you know, there's a certain part of me that just really believes most in people power, because, you know, this is some recent thoughts, but like at this point we seem to have a certain set of individuals in our government that act a certain way.
Exactly.
And if we were lucky, maybe at some point those set of people would change. But what we have in a democratic system is, thank goodness,
people power.
Is that people change. Yeah, people power, and the people in power change.
Yeah.
And so my question of late, like for myself, like philosophically, are the people in power the utmost issue or concern? Or if they are always changing, is it our active involvement that is the real difference at hand?
Exactly.
And I think that for me, what I've started to believe is that, like, because maybe for 4 years or for 3 years we do get someone or people in those political positions who are really great, and we can all hurrah and we can see some progress. But in order for those good people to be able to come through the ranks, there also has the opportunity for bad people to come through the ranks, or with people with different agendas. And so we need that flow, because otherwise you have dictatorship, and we don't really want to do dictatorship. From what I understand of it so far, doesn't seem like a lovely option. And so I think that it's active, ongoing involvement through our lives in the things we're passionate about in our communities and our backyards that really are going to make the difference.
Exactly. And I entirely agree. I was going to make that point. It's like you need the opposite opinion in order to make sure that yours is valid as well.
Oh, absolutely. It's so hard, but it's so true.
Yeah. And it's one thing to be like, oh, I wish we had this sort of government that did this all the time. But if we went into that loophole, then there'd be issues with that as well that we'd have to end up protesting anyway. So just this constant, you have to be active.
Yeah, and I think that more than ever, it's really counting. Like it is easier, and I say so with due respect, but it's easier to like donate the dollar, for example, to something that's happening in Africa, and it's very real, the stuff that happens in Africa. I'm not belittling that, but you can almost look, and there is like so many things in your backyard. There's so many things in Sydney that can be attended to. Yeah. There's so many things, you know, in Northern New South Wales that can be attended to. So many things in Queensland that can be attended to. So many things in so like there is always something in our backyard, and in some ways they are the hardest things, but the most important, because if people kind of were all like looking after their backyard and community in like a true sense, we would probably see some massive changes, because we have we put a lot of energy into things, and sometimes we have to. Sometimes there is the drilling in South Australia, but that does affect all of Australia. So you know, it becomes, even though it's not in our backyard, it does really become. It affects everybody. It affects all of our environment. You know, it affects over half of our coastline if an oil spill did happen, and it would affect heavily the Australian economy, not just for those local stakeholders or for those local communities. It affects everybody. Yeah. So then everybody's go jump in. And it all fundamentally comes back down to, we as humans, it's always easy, and we all do this to a certain extent, it's always easy to do things with the precedent that they wouldn't happen in your backyard, because at the end of the day, like, really, if these people who are making these decisions were like, oh, the oil spill would happen on my doorstep, or then the water would be polluted that I have to drink. It's all under the precedent that we have options. Yeah, exactly. You know, and that's something that I think the more that we be honest with each other and ourselves as like all individuals and companies and businesses, the less ridiculous, detrimental things we will do. Yeah. Where's the process with the drilling in the Australian Bight now? What reaction have you seen from the paddle outs? Just what's the whole situation there right now? So this is like the second round of paddle outs. This was like the first National Day of Action, which is really cool to actually like how quickly that got pulled together. Yeah. You know, that's a really positive thing. So on the 29th, we're the 26th today? On the 29th, I think in 3 days' time, they have to resubmit the application to NOPSEMA, which is the governing body of who approves drilling and doesn't approve drilling. They've already pushed them back once. They've already said, hey, this application, for lack of better words, just was like irresponsible. And they've already pushed it back once, but been like, if you could just fix these things, maybe we can push it through. So it's really what I think the ultimate thing would be is that not only this application gets denied, completely, is that from all the attention that's been raised, that the current
drilling context.
The current drilling context of in our Australian waters gets thrown out the window, in the sense that, okay, wow, like the people all around Australia really, really oppose this, and so we'll see on like the 29th, they have up until the 29th to resubmit, and they're going to, for sure, Equinor will, the company who's proposing for the drilling, will for sure resubmit. But at the end of the day, it isn't, Equinor's not really the issue, because companies are free to submit applications.
Exactly, yeah.
Nope, SEMA, if they did, or NOPSEMA, however you pronounce it, if they did so much as like deny that would really help, as in to say, but that still doesn't, that kind of fixes it for this thing, because then Equinor's the only company that's ever proposed to try and drill the Great Australian.
It's not like a legal precedent for the rest of the time.
And so when it's like, when the Great Australian Bight gets World Heritage protection, or when the Australian government goes, right, because of our stakeholders in fisheries and tourism, which provides a lot of,
money,
economy, a really positive economy, in the sense of, like, for Australians, it employs a lot of local Australians all around Australia, and it also circulates the money really well within the continent. Like, it doesn't get taken offshore. Like, it provides local jobs, and that money gets spent within Australia, which is like,
I like that point a lot, because a lot of the time the argument back towards some environmental policies is money. Like, what about the money? Like, look how much money we could make. But then in this situation, it's like, look how much money that, like, on the environmentalist side of the argument, is like, look how much money that this is going to affect negatively.
Yeah,
and
it's really, like, to be honest, it's one of those, it doesn't even provide a lot of jobs. Like, it really only benefits a handful of people. This proposed drilling only benefits a handful of people and affects negatively thousands and thousands and thousands of Australian jobs, which I think, as Australians, like, I love my job, I care about having my job, and I care about other people having their job and looking after their family. So it goes even, which is really cool, is that it goes, right now this issue goes beyond environment.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that that's really, really good, because we have to play I believe that we play the game at the level they want to play. Of course, it environmentally matters, but it's like, when we can prove that it's also would have a huge detrimental impact to the Australian economy and people. Wow, that's when we have to. It has to be addressed. Exactly. Everybody, and that's a big thing. Everybody in our country, as they should, does care about. And so the more clearly this is communicated, we'll just have to see. After the 29th, we'll make a new plan. But to have the amount of people attending the paddle outs, to have those numbers, is like a really clear indicative, and I think the turnout was amazing. So that's, full steam ahead. We'll see how things go after the weekend. Awesome.
Apparently you make music or something?
Me? I don't know.
Well, anyway.
Mondays and Wednesdays.
Part-time.
That's been my latest thing. People sometimes come up and be like, "Where do you Ziggy?" And I'm like, part-time. Mondays and Wednesdays. And I don't think people get that I'm trying to be funny, because it's not very funny, but
I think you're funny, Ziggy.
Thanks. I'm really glad.
So you obviously are extremely passionate about this thing, regardless of the music or not. Does being in the limelight make you feel obliged to address these issues and talk about these issues? Or is it just a sort of thing where it's like, I'd be doing nothing and I'd still be talking about this stuff, and now all of a sudden I've got this audience, so they may as well hear it as well? That's
a really good question. I think a lot of artists, that this goes back on, I think a lot of artists do feel obliged in some sense these days. I don't. It's just something, and that's where I really encourage that, like, for Horror Show Crew, it is human rights, and it's like the current immigration laws, like, that's their thing, is in like that, like, supporting people seeking asylum, like, that's their thing.
Yeah.
And they should not feel at all obliged to be then speaking about the whales and dolphins. Like, that's their thing. And like, my thing right now is trying to very selfishly try and do my part to at least communicate, because I have people in front of me, my thoughts and ideas. That's, I think, probably the biggest thing. I'm trying to, as much as I can, have my most well-formed opinions and ideas to share with people, because people listen, and I'm not a scientist or someone who's necessarily, it's not like I'm qualified.
Yeah.
You know? And so that's where I try to just be I try to speak about things on like a fundamental level, so that it's not just about the Great Australian Bite, it's about how we treat our world and how we treat each other, you know, things that are really fundamental. I don't feel obliged at all. I feel now more than ever, if anything, only obliged to be as clear and accurate as I can. Because you have an incredible opportunity. But I was already, as you would well know from previous, you know, early shows like the Paddington Church shows back in 2015.
Jesus.
Yeah, right? 2015. So that was like
4 years ago.
Was it March?
There were two runs. There was like a November one.
Yes.
And then a March one.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's true.
Because one of them was Runaway.
Yes, and was one of them Runaway, and was it then the end of Runaway?
I can't
remember if it was the start of the year, the first one, or a lot of shows. Back in those days, I was still talking at things as passionately as I could. You know, and I'm 25, and at that time I was, my math serves me, I was 20 or 21, and so you can see over the years how like as you accumulate information and a little more maturity, like you continue to grow what you're trying to communicate. Yeah. And so that's all I endeavor to do now, is how I communicate, and how succinct that is. That's what I'm like most concerned's not the right word. That's what I'm most passionate about doing. And some days you get it right, some days you don't. But that's not any skin off my back. Like some days I am just passionate, and I just, like for example, Splendor was one of those times where like I didn't necessarily communicate something as like perfectly as I'd planned to, but I was so passionate at that moment, so emotional at that moment, and I think that counts as well, to not just have a perfect speech. Yeah. I think if you can just try and be like honest and raw regardless, and if that can be communicated clearly, that's what's important.
Exactly. And we're at Splendor, let's talk about it. Yeah, okay. I remember, so my partner at the time was playing somewhere else. I'm like, this clash is killing me.
Yeah, I think that was like one of the few clashes. I would have
come through how to dance.
Yeah, seriously, I would have been around. Yeah, and so that was funny. It was like pretty much one of the only clashes that and I was like, but
so she had like a little break between her sets. I'm like, I'm just sprinting across Splendor by myself. The cops are probably like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? Like, he's running from us or something. Security are like, what? So I'm just sprinting across Splendor, like pitch black. Like, it's so dark at Splendor at night. Yes. Can't see anything of people everywhere. And I just like run over. And you just see the like for laps across the sun. Laps around the sun, sorry. And I'm like, oh, and then the intro was just so... That speech wasn't like... And I can tell by having seen 1,000 of your shows, like you don't rehearse the stories, but you know when you're going to tell a story, and you can hear it in your voice when, I've heard this one before and this is how he's going to tell it. And you sound calm when you say it. Yeah. But like in that moment before Laps Around the Sun, it was like, I'd never heard you speak like from the gut, I think ever. Yeah. And that was such a special moment, I think.
Yeah, that was like, I think I was just really like kind of like fired up, and that's like you said, and the reason why you try and have a really like clear and somewhat predetermined way to speak is because when you're in front of those people having this amazing moment, it's really tricky to you want to get caught up in it, and so it's like and so that's where it might be someone's first show, and it might be the first time they hear it. There's going to be like characters like you and several, a lot of people who've seen it and heard it before. But it's like, for me, I might have said it and heard myself say it 1,000 times over the last X amount of years, but it might be the first time somebody hears it. And that's where it's like, I've learned that it's more important to like, to be a little repetitive, because the most repetitive it can be is like situations like you where maybe it's like you've seen like 12 shows or something. I don't know if it's that many or if it's that little.
I'll do the maths while.
You'll do the maths.
I'll do the maths internally, yeah.
But so like there is a maximum of 12 times you've heard that, which is still like and like my friends who come on tour, they've said it, they've heard it, 500 times. but there's people in the crowd who've heard just hearing that song or that story for the first
Yeah.
time, and that's why you tell it the best way possible that it serves the song and the story. But yeah, Splendor, I was just really fired up, and I meant it. I was like, if we as the Australian people do our best to look after each other and our country, as all people, all races, all backgrounds, all religions, because that's what's beautiful to be Australian, is that, you know, like my auntie, you know, my half auntie is Australian, and she's Hungarian Filipino.
Yeah.
And here I am, it's like my mum's Hungarian, my dad's Australian, but his parents are Dutch and English, and beyond the Hungarian is like Slovakian and French, and beyond the Dutch and English is the more French and some, you know, French Jewish background. And so like, but that's what makes me feel Australian, is that we're not bound by tradition or by a color or by like one history. We are like one of the we have to be like the most culturally, you know, diverse country, and I think that's what we should celebrate and be proud of. And so and I think that at the end of the day, when we do endeavor and take action to look after each other, I see it all the time.
Yeah.
You know, when I see like at Splendor, I don't know how many people were there, as in, because I think the capacity at 10, I don't know what it was. Like, I don't.
It was full the whole time.
But then to see it was overflowing outside, like could have been over 10,000 people that night, and to see over 10,000, when I get to see over 10,000 people like work together, because you think about that, 10,000 people congregating in one area, like that's like not an easy feat, and a lot can go wrong. And I see time and time again that people look after each other. We all see time and time again, there'll be like 30,000 people in the crowd, and sure, there's accidents, but for the most part, there's not like 30,000 people also telling them what to do. People work. You often will see, or at least I get to see from stage, like a lot of cohesiveness and a lot of good. And so, Splendor was really inspiring. That was the last Australian show.
Wow.
Coming up to, you know, Horden in 3 days' time.
Friday. Huge. And I think it's even harder to make. Oh, sorry. Pause. If you can make 10,000 people sing every word to like 5 songs back to you, then those moments you have between the songs where you do say something impactful, something you post on Instagram as well, they're gonna interact with that the same way that they might interact with the next song or something like that. So it's such a powerful tool, and like the tool of just having people listen.
That's the hardest thing, you know, is that like there's so many people with a lot of good to say, and people who are with more experience, with more like data, with more, like there is always people. And the hardest thing to do is to get the opportunity to have that many people listen.
Exactly.
And so then that's why me as an artist, you know, circling back, that's why me as an artist, I don't feel obliged, and no one should feel obliged, but I just feel really passionate to be able to have the opportunity to do that.
Wow. Amazing. Just gonna take a breath after that. So let's just take it all the way back.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if there's any things, I go on tangents.
No, it's fine.
So
we're doing really well. We're actually more on track than I thought would be. So obviously we're presenting a lot of values here, like for myself and yourself as well. Where does this come from? What was the Alberts household growing up like? Where do these values stem from, do you think?
Well, growing up, I was like homeschooled, which the more I forget that like it was a very obvious story early on, but the bigger your music becomes, the less people actually know about like your roots kind of thing. So I was homeschooled. I didn't see inside a classroom until I was 13. Grew up like pretty much the most incredible opportunity you have as a child. I think like I went and visited actually on the Sunshine Coast. I went and visited the place. Like I went and was with my girlfriend, and I went and showed her like the unit I was born in. You know, can drive past because it was like literally on the beach. Like every cliche in the book. Like I was born in a birth pool, in a unit overlooking the ocean on like a stormy July early morning. Like just like there's probably whales breaching and shit. Like, you know, who knows? It was Mum can tell you more. But long story short, it's like I was born there. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. I was born there, and then like grew up just down the road, like at a place where like there wasn't a road between us and the beach. Like literally, like my parents used to rent these little beach shacks, and like we're just like, well, we're just going to. They wanted to have this really beautiful family life, and I think my parents aren't like environmental activists, which I think is a really good point to make. It's not like they're like have this big history in activism.
Yeah.
What they did was they tried to look after their backyard.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, how can we look after our family and best raise our children? And for them, that was homeschooling. That was dad worked from home. My mum was like looking after 4. Dad had 2 before us, so like 4 to 6 children, not including friends.
Yeah.
She had this full crazy mother role and nurturing role. And we just like grew up very surfing, skating, and like had a really good education. But because you're not having to transit back and forth from school, it wasn't like we were at the desk 9 till
Exactly.
9 till 3, for example, right? Like we would, and if there was surf, it was crazy. If there was surf, we would like ditch school for the day. Like it was nuts, and I then moved north. I moved further north, like to on the Sunshine Coast. Started doing like board riders, like surfing comps, and I was 13 when I went to school. I went to this place called Mountain Creek.
Shout outs.
Yeah, shout out Mountain Creek, say hi. And that's the biggest public school in Queensland. And so that was pretty funny. But I had long blonde hair at the time, and I had a girlfriend out of that school because of surf comps, and so like I had the luckiest intro as a homeschool kid ever at school. Like, people thought I was cool.
Yeah.
It wasn't until like year 11 when I shaved my head and I was doing 2 maths and 2 sciences and senior English. They were like, "This guy's a nerd."
Yeah.
And I'd snuck through the ranks, so it was really great. I had a really funny schooling. I didn't feel very much at place at school in the sense that I had my friends who were football players and sports people because I was right into my sports.
Yeah.
Or, like not team sports, but I was into surfing and being active.
Yeah.
Then I had my friends in maths C, maths 2, my crew I really got on we're all like I got on intellectual level.
Yeah.
I just had like I would kind of just like lunchtimes like roaming the school, seeing different friends kind of thing. I graduated when I was 16. I worked my butt off. I thought that school was a really good experiment on how to like, it's gonna sound bad, but like how to play the game.
Yeah.
And it was like,
how
can I play the game the way I'd like to? And my parents were really were really great. They're really supportive in the sense they were like, well, if I came home once and like I had just started with this maths teacher and he was an idiot. And I was like, I just came home and I was like, don't remember his name, but I was like, this guy's an idiot. And they're like, okay, like we'll help you move class. Like it's fine. Like I had a really good trust base with them where it was like I could say that, and what happened from that was then I got my best ever maths teacher, Nadine Soward, who I still have a cup of tea with every now and then. Like someone who's a really influential, great teacher and a really great person through my senior years. So we had this really, I think the big focus with my learning was, I think probably fundamental was, my parents were really concerned that we understood when we were learning things, not just copying.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's really shapes a lot of values, is like an endeavor to understand, because we like these days more than ever, like we outsource everything. It's not like have the vocabulary. It's like, here's an app.
Yeah,
you can have your vocabulary on the spot. That's, and I'm not giving that a hard time. I'm just saying, but that's different to retaining understanding of of what you're trying to apply to the world. And so my parents were just really, I remember like very frustrating, especially when like your mother is your teacher as well, because you can't just, there has to be respect across the board. I really appreciate that now. Like it wasn't like, this is your teacher and this is... I didn't get it when I went to school. I didn't get it that some teachers just didn't give a fuck. I didn't get it that it was like, I was like, hold on, like, aren't we meant to work together? Like, and so I had this really, really great upbringing. A lot of siblings, so 5 siblings. Surfed, skated, did martial arts, was just very active. I graduated when I was 16. At that point, again, and my parents were really cool. Like I look back, but like I started working in a music bar, collecting glasses, for cash under the table kind of thing, because I was too young. I collect glasses, and it was a music bar.
There you go.
And so that's when I started to see music. I was right involved straight out of school into there. I actually was sometimes traveling to Sydney to intern in freelance journalism, interning at a surf magazine called Stab Mag. And so I was actually more on the side of being a writer than being a musician. And as you can tell from the subjects I was just describing to you in school, I didn't do creative subjects in school. I didn't pick up a guitar till I graduated. Till after I graduated, my parents bought it as a present. So I didn't actually plan at all on being a musician.
I think that's the thing with a lot of creatives as well, is a lot of the most successful creatives, not successful, but some of the most engaging creatives are ones that aren't necessarily single-handedly a creative.
Yes.
So there's a lot of value for a creative to be socially around, or there's a lot of values for them to be knowledgeably around.
Yes.
So I'm studying commerce, and I don't know if that's something I want to finish with, but like learning that space of like doing that and then being able to engage with ideas there, and then coming to a completely separate world and be able to engage with ideas here and then bundle that all together is so valuable, I think, for anyone trying to break into any sort of creative community. It's like you need to have some sort of ability to create and to engage with ideas no matter what they are.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that your ability as a creative to there is and there's no that's not a problem necessarily, that if you're just the creative,
exactly.
that can only be the artistic, and some people are just the artistic and that's it. But like for me, for example, like I see such a you said it really well, to be able to engage on a lot of different arenas, like the fact that you're doing commerce and also doing podcasts, like I think that it also helps you get a really an understanding of all sides of life, more or less, like or business or careers. It gives you like, and so I was like freelance. I was like full study, full nerd in school. Like I thought about maybe going to dentistry because I knew this family who was in dentistry, and I saw they made a really good impact. Like they were helping with third world countries. They were surfing a lot. They had this really great practice, and I was like, well, that seems pretty cool. And I thought about engineering because I was right into my maths, but I never went to university. I had this gap year that I'm still on, and I just 7 or 8 years later never went back. And it just so happened that my parents bought me a guitar, and probably through my senior year I was like, I had a Tumblr, and I was like doing, I guess, more or less poetry on there, and writing, and I was doing freelance journalism, as I'd said. I was doing this freelance work. So writing has, from probably like 13, played a really big role in my life. Yeah. Like writing was like this thing that was okay. And that's what music is essentially. Yeah. It is one avenue of writing.
Exactly.
And that sort of expression. And it just kept becoming more and more of a thing. Like it wasn't like I was like, I'm going to be a musician. Like I just picked up the guitar, and then I played one gig, and then I played an open mic night. Then I tried to get booked another gig, and I would just be well unprepared all the time. I was always completely in over my head, as always, still am. And it just kept progressing, and then it got to this point where I was doing less and less freelance, more and more shows. Was still working at a cafe. Yeah. So when I first picked up guitar, I was working in a music bar, collecting glasses at night, midweek making coffee during the day. Something has to give, it was a bit too much. Yeah. And then I got to this point, turned up to work, hungover that day, may I add, and it was like 6 a.m, but I still got there early to try and be a good guy, a good employee, which I wasn't a very good employee, but I was like, I wasn't really great. I don't think I was the best employee. I was hard working, but I think when it came to like having to do things that seemed a little stupid, I was like,
fuck that.
But then I did, because like, maybe it's a stubbornness. But I remember the last day, and I remember, I might have been getting paid $12 an hour or something, like something just like, I'd been in cafes for years, like I was on like an entry level wage at this cafe, and getting given grief for no reason, and turned up early, was trying to do the right thing, was hungover, but that's part of life. I was still there, still. But
how old were you then?
18, 19,
What do you expect though? Yeah, exactly.
But and I felt like at that point I was like, so if I play like 2 more shows a week, I can be just as broke as I am, but I have more time to surf. Yeah. I was like, okay, done. Well, that seems like that seems like a life plan. And so even me pursuing music, it wasn't some big like, I'm gonna play music Sydney Mine Music Bowl, I'm gonna play Horde, and I'm gonna start a record label. It was like, I actually just thought it was a means to an end. Like I was like, I get to have a better life. It's like life will be better, and I'll enjoy more what I do. Exactly. And because of the work I put in with school, for example, I knew how to apply myself. Yeah. And I was like, well, I've learned how to apply myself to things I don't care about, so now I can apply myself to something I do care about. And that was like, then all of a sudden it was like, okay, let's do it. And then it just was like, it was almost an addiction, I guess. Like, it was like, it just started to, because you played this show and you saw that, like, you progressed. And you played this next show and you played this next show, and all of a sudden I'd play like 5 to 9 shows a week. And, and it was just a whirlwind, you know, like, I was never employed since.
Did you write Gone at that time?
I wrote Gone.
Or before then?
I even wrote Gone before, when I was still working. I think at that point I wrote Gone in like October 2011. Around October 2011, because the old YouTube video is still there, and I wrote it the day before and I uploaded it the next day through like mum and dad's little camcorder kind of thing in the granny flat. And I was wearing this paisley yellow t-shirt. This filthy thing.
Is it weird that like Gone and Simple Things still get some of the biggest reactions at shows, knowing where you were at the time when you wrote them and like the place you were in and the position you're in? Yeah,
it's bizarre. It is really bizarre. I think like I went through, unbeknownst to a lot of people, like with Gone, for example, like I went through a phase where I was like, I'd written it, released it on this EP on SoundCloud way back in the days, and at some point I was almost embarrassed by that song, believe it or not, for like I think a year or two. I was like, I felt like it was really like, it was a very teenager boy song, and I think because it was still like so close to home, I felt like this really funny thing. And then at some point I was like, just so like I'm laughing through most of that song, like just in absolute disbelief that here's this song that, and I think it's something really artists should realize, is that you don't know, like you can put in the best effort you can to a song, but you don't really know how people. With Runaway, I didn't know Runaway was going to do as well as it's done, you know. And with Gone, I wrote it because it was what happened to me, and it was like the most honest expression. It was like a story of something that happened, and about like, you know, a childhood crush. And so I think what I've learned over the years, what always comes through, what people get with me, is like the songs that are like really raw. And it's crazy. I think it's like, but it's something that's great for other artists to see if they wish, is that like you should never belittle your early works. Even like Best Friend is one of the first songs I wrote on piano. After learning piano, you know, and I'm really proud of that song. My playing will improve, has improved, should improve a little more. But I think there's something special when you first. There's something special about... In the first drafts, you know, there's something you got to remember about those, and like appreciate about those, because they're unadulterated. They're not observed in the same way as I observe my own songs now, or build my own songs now. It doesn't make them any more or less special, but there's something about them that's like, can be so genuine. So it is crazy. It's crazy seeing like Gone all these years later, that it's still like, people really want to hear that song. And I'm like, that's me. I'm on stage every show, like, just waiting for it. I'm like waiting to cry in the corner. Let's go. So it's like, it's something really, it's something bizarre, but it just shows you how much you can't, like, I even with Runaway released it because I had I'd written Start Over at a similar time, or just after I'd written Start Over, and I was like, it was going to be used in an advertisement, a surfing advertisement, and I was like, I don't want to give them my best song. Like, I'm going to give them like, I think Runaway's a nice song, but I'm not going to. And then Runaway went up, and again, it wasn't even like all of a sudden just went crazy and got a million streams. It's time. But it just like, even now it just keeps marching. Like it just, people just continue to listen to that song, and I think it's like really funny, because like here I was going, I'll give this song to the surf advertisement because I don't want to give like the song I feel even more special about. Exactly. And then that Runaway was like a next step song, I think. You know, it feels like there was Simple Things, Gone were some really early ones that like stuck with people. And then I think Runaway like stepped this new level. And then I think probably after that maybe was like, probably the next like jump probably was Love Me Now, I think. You know, that was like the next like, like another level of, and it just hit another level again. And it's all super organic as well. I think the good thing about, and I think the people keep going back to your back catalogue, is there's a lot of skepticism by consumers right now when something just pops up on the J's or whatever. It's like, hang on, who's this guy? Like, where does he come from? So there's a lot of value in you having such a strong back catalogue. So you like, there was obviously a big push there, industry side, that you hadn't got ever.
So for people to engage with that and then say, holy shit, like there's 3 albums here. Well, there's an EP, an album, and an EP.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, holy shit, like there's so much back catalogue. So it's almost like those songs came out again.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think something early on was, who's the band? Who does a song as a chorus says, I need my girl. I need my girl. Under the gun again. Who's it by?
Intern.
Who's it by? There's this song. It's one of my buddy's favorite bands. But they were an example. It will come to me some point during this interview. But they were an example of. Can you look it up? I need my girl. And to see who comes up. But they're an example. It was like the 6th album or something that actually went somewhere.
Yeah.
And the sickest thing was, they had 5 or 6 albums.
Yeah.
People were just like,
holy shit,
frothing at the mouth, you know, and like that's like the National. Thank you, you know. Thank you, you're very good. Wow, did that feel good? Did it feel good? You had someone like just
usually it's just me in here.
Yeah.
Some washed up DJ, but this time I've got my intern. Nah, just kidding.
No, that's great. Thank you. The National, you know, they're an example of the many. You know, like even look at like Passenger. Passenger, for example, like not someone I listen to all the time, but Let It Go was the 4th album. Like it was considered a flop. Like he wasn't like this up and coming. Like it was kind of like 4th album.
Yeah.
And then like, and people were sleeping on him kind of thing. And then, you know, so I think there's something really good for people to be able to look back to like a lot of stuff. And I feel like what's nuts is that like Land and Sea is almost as relevant as it's ever been.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. 5 years, you know, like 5 years on kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like, what? Like how is that still? And some of the songs are from 2013.
Yeah.
So it's like up to 5 or 6 years on, those songs are still relevant. I think that's what I really appreciate about my listeners is they don't just turn up for one song.
Yeah.
And they aren't just, even with the industry attention I've had in the last 18 months, people like in it for like all of it in the long run. And I think that's like something that's something like I wouldn't trade. Like I wouldn't trade my career for anybody's. I wouldn't trade like my listeners and crowd for anybody. Because I think I think the quality of people I have who come to shows and like support my music is like people can show me a better example. You know what? For example, someone who I'd say would have like a relatively like I've observed dedicated fan base to a whole catalog is like Dermot Kennedy. Yeah. For example, but like I still wouldn't trade my people for his people. You know, like I'm so feel so lucky that people listen to my whole back catalog and my new stuff and still give me a chance when I bring out something that's a bit different. Like Intentions.
Yeah. I think you have a song that came out 2 minutes ago.
Is that right?
That
did come out today,
12?
didn't it?
Is it past 12? Check the time. What time is it?
So it was the Intentions acoustic came out
really?
Yeah. So I recorded an acoustic version when I was in Portugal, just like a couple of weeks ago.
We're live.
Here we are. We're live, baby. Woo! We'd have like some party poppers or something, but they aren't environmentally friendly, so we aren't. No, it's, you know, so like when I have something like you know, like look at Intentions, I think that even that song as being like was a different taste and was like me like for people who really dig Land and Sea, it was would be like a bit of like a hold up moment, where is this going? But I saw this comment on my YouTube at one point which I thought was really great. Like someone was like, I don't dig this song as much, but I'm really glad that you're experimenting, and said like and can't wait to see what comes next. And I was like, that is why these are my people, because like even when someone doesn't dig this song as much as that song, they're still in it for the ride. Exactly. And I think so that's really cool. You know?
I think it was inevitable you become an R&B star though.
For you and me, we know that was what's so funny is that like crew like Horror Show were really my biggest influence to become a musician. Yeah. From writing to musician, like Horror Show were one of my earliest biggest influences. You know, like that's. So there's so much history in like rap for me. Yeah. That's hilarious that people just don't identify. Yeah. But for me, it's like I think so much. You can tell a story a lot of different ways, and again, it's just how can you tell it honestly. And something that was a big challenge for me with Intentions, was telling the story of like some of the realities of my life now, which I always try and tell like the reality of where my life is now, and the reality of my life is I also tour internationally now. I do have like. I'm in a different position. I'm not just living in my van on the beach busking anymore. And
Yeah.
so in effort to continue to be honest with listeners and with myself, it's like you have to tell those
You have
sides
to
of your
present
life.
that same honesty. You can't dig back into when you were 16 writing about a girl
Yes.
and that doesn't exist anymore.
Yes, yeah, and so I think that was like a really great. That was really fun for me personally.
Yeah.
Really, and to do this acoustic version that came out today was really important, because that's where I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to listen to this acoustic version, after this interview or today, and they're going to go. It got played in over 100 different radios in the UK, for example. Like Intentions got smashed. Like it was awesome. And I think for the really hardcore folk listeners and people who like super Land and Sea fans, I think they're going to listen to the acoustic version that's been recorded, and they're going to go like this. Like that's, I get it.
It makes sense.
And that's what's really, that's why I'm really appreciative. That's what I think has grown in my songwriting, is that I have the ability now to like write this song in this acoustic sense, to do that, and it be presented acoustically and be presented as the way it did in an almost Ed Sheeran vibe in the original produced recording. And I just am continuing to try and be brave and establish, not even establish, that's not the right word. I'm trying to be brave and just be a singer-songwriter, because that's like, Intentions is fairly left field for me in the scheme of things. Like I'd say it was like me, it was me pushing myself. It came naturally, but it was pushing myself. No, maybe it wasn't pushing myself. It was me listening to an entirely valid part of my songwriting that I hadn't like explored. What's beautiful is between like Gone, Simple Things, and Intentions. Now there's this whole party of like opportunity and mixes and there's songs that are like, the songs that aren't as I guess rap pop as Intentions, but aren't as folky as the original work. Is like Love Me Now, and there's a beautiful thing starting to happen now because you open yourself up to these ideas and these melodies. Is all of a sudden and that's what I think. What I don't want to do is I don't want to just make another Runaway. I don't want to just make another Simple Things or another Gone. Like I don't want to do that. I know that's the safe option, but I don't wish to do that because I've never wished to do that. The only reason Love Me Now came out was because I was willing to almost try a borderline, a little bit more country, if anything. Like it's like a country pub song, and so that was me taking a step. Simple Things was me taking a step from from Gone into fingerstyle. It was all those things have been steps and expansion and growth, and that's what Intention was for me. And what's now come out from that is it's really exciting. I don't feel like the songs that I'm writing today have any impact on the whole catalog, and that's my dream actually, which I don't really talk about much. My dream is that people could listen to Land and Sea, could listen to 4 Feet in the Forest, could listen to Laps Around the Sun, and can listen to a record, in the future. And none of them, they all complement each other. That's my dream. That's my dream as an artist, is to not have 5 albums that sound exactly the fucking same. I know that would be safe, but I don't want to. I just want to have what's most honest and curious to me.
Yeah. And I think I'll take it back to that hip-hop point, because when I was introduced to your music, shout out Michelle, she's the OG. I'll give her all the credit for this.
Good on you, Michelle.
I was like a hardcore hip hop head,
yes,
rap. I love that stuff because it was so literal.
Yes.
When they're telling non-fiction stories, there's not a lot of metaphor behind. There is some metaphor behind it in terms of wordplay and stuff, but it's easy to follow. It's super non-fiction. It's super literal. These people telling stories over albums. And then when I was slowly getting more into the folk stuff, I'm like, why do I like this? And it's because it's the exact same art form it's just presented in a different way.
Yes.
So it's just so I think there's so much crossover between hip hop and folk, that people sleep on.
In true, and there is a true, I think in the truest sense, when folk music is in its honest form, and when rap is in its honest form, when look at pop punk, for example. Very honest. Look at some of the screamo metal stuff, the Crew and the stuff they talk about and touch on. There is so many. The more you grow as an artist, and the more you maybe grow, and see in music, you start to see a lot of crossover. And I couldn't agree more. There was, for me personally, it was Crew Like Horror Show that turned me from going. made me realize you can write really honest stories in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
In a song, and that excited me. That's that's what excites me today.
Yeah. Wow. Just gotta take a breath. Bring it back to center.
Come to breath.
Let's talk about touring. You're probably the most relentless. I think you are probably the most relentless tourer in Australia. I don't see it's almost a part of your brand, because when you started, it was the regional tours where I'm in a van, I'm playing fucking how many shows a week, and it's just always been a part of the Ziggy Alberts brand. You haven't really given yourself an actual break until you had the surgeries and stuff. How do you come off a tour now and have to go back in the studio and try write? Does it hinder your inspiration, or does it feel like all the time away it's like you're just like pumping just to be like, oh, I need to get these songs out, I need to get these tunes out?
That's a really good question. This year was the first year I started riding in the bus, because this is the first year I've been on a sleeper, like in America and Europe, to be on a bus with bunk beds.
Yeah.
And so this is the first year that like would be sitting up at like 2 a.m. writing songs after a show when the bus is driving from, Kansas to Saskatoon or something, And so so that's been an interesting time this year. I've always written just when songs come. Like, for example, like last night I was working on a new song, and because for me, like they're there and then they go, and you kind of have to like nurture them and capture them there and then, because they go otherwise. That's the way my songwriting works. I don't usually put down something instrumentally. Yeah. It's not like planned. It just kind of like I'll have a melody. I had a melody before I took a flight, and then I recorded my voice memos, and then was playing the guitar 2 days later and figured out something. And last night I was like, I feel like I need to get this all kind of down into one spot. Going into studio, I think probably I was in studio for like 8 days in Portugal just now, doing some exciting things, and heard it first, Parry Talks.
Exclusives.
Registered trademark.
Sorry, Triple J. This is my man.
This is my guy. This is my moment. And so I was in studio coming off tour, and I think probably one of the things I was battling with was like fear, in the sense that I've made mistakes, wrong word, but I've put myself, like Laps Around the Sun got recorded post tour, post the hardest year of touring and like health I'd ever had. Yeah. And to kind of, that's what made Laps something a really genuine, beautiful record, was that like I was like pretty broken, and I was hell bent on not being broken for those songs. I was like, nah. I was like, I haven't come this far to not give these songs everything I have. If it's like, if it's the last thing I do, I've got to do this right. That's how I felt about this song. And I think that's what resonates with the album, is I think those songs have that feeling of like intensity. Yeah. I think that's, I meant what I was saying in those songs, more than ever when I was recording them. And so going into studio, I'm really cautious now when I go into studio and what I try and achieve. So, in Portugal, I thought about recording a lot of new stuff, and I ended up just doing some sweet, like stripped back alternate versions to like a lot of different songs from the last 4 or 5 years, because that's what felt right to do. I was a bit fearful to burn myself out by doing those extra studio days when I didn't have to. But what came from, for example, was Intentions Acoustic. Yeah. And that was like a really important way to express that song. I'd say it's forever the balance coming off tour. There is like a decompression kind of phase. Like the first couple of weeks, like you're like fine, and you don't know where you are. Like you have like it's kind of like 3 or 4 days after, then like 1 week to 10 days after that, there's like, you wake up, you don't, like I've woken up, I don't know where I am. Like I kind of wake up and I go, okay, I'm safe, but where am I? Like you're just so cooked, I'm still today, like really, like even these last weeks, because I'll come home and I also then am like helping, like I'm still behind most of the decisions in the label and Common Folk, because we're running independent, and I'm still like behind, like I'm talking the lighting plan, I'm talking the iMag video direction for the shows, I'm talking content, like it's like, and so I don't just finish tour. I don't just finish as an artist. I also come home to be a part of like a management team when I'm on and off the road. I'm still involved in those things. So I continue to get better. I continue to get better at knowing what works for me, what doesn't. For example, like on days like today, I come and do this interview now, and I'm not going to go home and try and do 4 other things. Like I'm going to go back to the Airbnb and like rehearse, do yoga and rehearse, and it's really tricky to be kind to yourself in these situations. And I mean, hats off to people who've been doing it longer than me, because I have been touring pretty hard out. In the 1 year I wasn't touring, I was still traveling a lot, I worked a lot, and I had surgeries.
Yeah.
So no one forces me to do it. I think I'm just still very like addicted to like the chaos and the challenge, because like you learn so much from it.
Yeah.
And there's also nothing like it. It's also just old fashioned.
Yeah.
Like back in the days, crew just toured, and that's how it wasn't because you had Instagram.
No.
You toured. That's how you won the hearts of the people.
Yeah.
And that's something like I felt very blue collar, blue collar old school. Like you tour, you do your best every night, and that's it. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
And I do look forward to this is going to be over 120 shows from December till December, and like I'm not going to do 120 shows next year.
Yeah.
With the international travel added, I think I'm going to do about 80 next year, and
that's still
a lot. Yeah. But comparative to what I've done, it's like that's not so bad. And so it's just about you just have to keep learning how to be reasonable with yourself, and what you put yourself through and why. A certain part of it is that particularly as young males, I think you want to know young males, you want to know, you want to push, you want to know that you want to know that when shit hits the fan that you are strong enough to be there for your people, for yourself, to not lose it. Trick is knowing that to be true, practicing it when you have to, not putting yourself through it when you don't.
Yeah.
And that's one of my big lessons is listening to myself on a physical level, and being realistic. And that's something that that's something that I continue to do. I think on what I'm doing to maintain the amount of touring is that I'm very, very healthy with even though I drink now, which you may or not know.
Really?
I started drinking again this year. But I'm not a big party animal, which we can talk about. I'm not a big party animal. I do a lot of yoga this year. Most consistently I've been doing yoga on a everyday or very, very regular occurrence, and meditation. That's kind of how I'm keeping
staying
up.
alive.
Yeah,
that's what it is. Literally staying alive.
Yeah, and
because there's no way you can survive mentally at all if you're not.
That's why you see people mentally going through what they go through.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, hats off to people who party and do this. But my situation's again a little different.
No, just kidding.
I'm kidding. I think, but for me, I have a very peculiar situation where I'm also a part of the management team that runs the label, and also across the decision. So I have even more on my plate than what some artists do.
Yeah.
And so it's not really an option for me, but I'm a little psycho, so I really like it that way.
Exactly. And I think the music industry and mental health in the music industry is going to be the biggest topic for our community going forward, because it is so so slept on, so underestimated.
Yes.
And if you go to a show, it's and whether you're in media, whether you're setting the stage up, whether you're the artist on the stage, whether you're doing the camera work, it's the only industry in the world where you're encouraged to drink while you work, or encouraged to do silly things while you work. Yes. And it's not frowned upon.
Yes.
And they're very high social environments. They're loud venues. You can't have real conversation. Massively high pressure environments. Under strict time, it's it's the most cooked thing. And then you throw people encouraging you to drink, people encourage you to stay up all night, and that sort of thing. And it's just such a people don't think about it or see, especially the consumer don't often see the side of Ziggy's playing 80 shows this year. What's that going to do for him personally?
And I think what's crazy is there's me as the artist, but what about the people? I was just checking it's still working.
No, it's fine. Just
I could see that screen pop up. I was like, no.
No, we're good.
It's something to be said for how I have one job, right? But and I used to help load in. I used to help set up. Used to do it. First off, I used to do my own sound. Used to drive myself. So, but I think the thing that you touched on then is it's not just me.
Yeah.
It's everybody, and the hours they put in, and the intensity for all of the music industry. Even down to looking at what my girls do at the office, where because there's you have to do stuff on multiple time zones. People are on.
Yeah.
On. You know, working crazy hours that the human body over the last, you know, millions of years hasn't had time to adapt to.
Yeah.
Now we work at night in different time zones and we fly between 5 time zones in 5 weeks. There's so many things, and until you see behind the scenes, which you're seeing more and more of now, when you see behind the scenes of like what people put themselves through, not just the artists, like what the music industry, it's not a surprise that people get a little broken.
Yeah.
Because like what everyone's experiencing for one night or for 2 nights on the weekend, someone might be doing 6 nights a week.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think it's something it's great, it's becoming a topic. I think there's more and more awareness of it, and it's again, what a great time that it's like becoming a topic and a conversation in music.
Exactly, it's good. It's a good thing for sure. Wow. Let's I think there was a time reflecting where I saw you play a show. I think it would have been, you played a bar probably just around the corner from here. You did a Max Watts show. I'm just trying to think of what tour it was. I think it was 4 Feet in the Forest tour.
Yes.
And I remember seeing you and being like, Ziggy's off. Not off, like the performance was still there, but I'm like, this isn't the same.
Yeah.
And like, I was like, that was like literally the first moment I've seen where I'm like, where I've properly had that thought process of like, holy shit. Was like watching you being like, you can tell you're tired.
Yes.
And like, yeah.
Yeah, I think, and that's what's funny is I can't even remember that moment. I could tell you a whole bunch of other moments where I felt off. Yeah. Comparatively.
Like the performances there, don't get me wrong, but like, you know, when you see someone and you see someone over again.
But it's
like,
never
hang on.
with me a performance. That's the funny thing is that's like the double-edged sword with like what I do is that people don't give a fuck about my performance. End of the day. People genuinely probably like it more when I'm like having a giggle and like making mistakes on stage because like it's me having a really good time. Yeah. That's what people are there for, is like that like embodiment of like we are here together doing something really special. Mm-hmm. I'm not like a performance artist, you know, and so I think it does count. And I think that more people than they'd give themselves credit for realize when they see the artist and go, whoa, that person's a bit off. And 4 Feet in the Forest was just before, I actually had a lot of back pain. It was just before I had a hernia surgery on my stomach. One of the surgeries I've had. And so like, I was probably in a lot of pain, and I remember that tour being like, I remember we had a cook schedule on that tour. That's the biggest thing is like, it's not even down to the amount of shows you do, it's about how. And so like, it's not even if I do 80 shows or 120 shows next year or 150 shows, it's like how you do it. Yeah. And that's like, that's the process of learning for sure. I remember a couple of those moments, and again, you just like, you take 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 4 steps forward, 1 step back, you know. And so like this last couple of weeks, it was like, I think it got to like the day before I left for Sydney to come here, and I was like, I'd just been foot to the floor, hopped off the plane, I was just smashing interviews, like just all that stuff. And I was like, hold on, like I have to like, you know, like in 3 days time I have to is not the right word, but in 3 days time I am about to go play to 5,000 people. Yeah. Like that's the thing. Like, you know, I'm really lucky to have my family, you know, like dad who like just pulled me aside and be like, hey, remember, like that's what counts. Yeah. Like now, like the interviews, like I wanted to do this one, but like as for like all the other stuff over the next 3 weeks.
Where'd you get your name from? Right. Where'd you get your artist name from? No, yeah. I need that on loop. You know, it's the time that like, if all I did was like, if all I was doing was like swimming with my dolphins and kissing starfish, you know, the next couple of weeks before I started tour, like that was the only thing I should do. But I also have this habit of like, a part of what makes me calm, because I'm like a little bit like tweaked, is what makes me calm is that I don't like spend this week going, I'm about to play my biggest ever Sydney show. I spend this week like focused on like, I got this interview, I'm gonna do some yoga, and then it almost then like day at a time.
I like kind of like walk onto stage and go like,
hang on,
because that's like that's how I remain. I think like calm for me personally. It's how I do. That's how I remain like calm, and I have to watch it myself that I don't put myself under the pump up until these moments just to do that, you know, because you can also, as I mature, you can also like I could also just spend the next 3 days just having like a wicked time and enjoying the lead up to these shows, you know. Yeah. So it's a forever, like, you know, how you maintain it with touring is just, I think, an ongoing thing, and you just have to look back at each tour and also listen. This is probably my biggest takeaway, is like, what do you like doing post tour? Not what you could or should. Like what you like, and like I like going to the coffee shop and doing poetry. Yeah. Like I like doing that. I like going for a walk, without my phone and not having any plan on what I have to do after.
Mm-hmm.
It's little things like this. You have to just listen to yourself. That's where you just go sit with yourself quietly and be like, what really makes you feel good? And that's the things that make you feel good post
Exactly.
and you just have to be disciplined and do those.
All right. We could talk for days.
Yeah, I know.
Let's go. I'm going to hit it's good. I think in terms of the bass interview, I think that's perfect. That's a good way to end it. But let's hit the fans. Your fans are crazy. They're the best. I reckon we've had this conversation around. They're the best. But these are some good ones. So Lauren Peterson, big shout outs. She goes, what gives you hope? And I think that she meant that in the political side of things. Obviously, there's a lot of grim things going on right now, environmentally. But what keeps you what keeps you like, we can achieve this? Is it seeing the numbers out on the beach on Saturday, or is it other things?
I think it's seeing the reality. Like, if we look out here, like outside right now, there's some hombre, like, doing an online grocery delivery service with his door open. People aren't hitting his door, which is open on the street. It's a tight street, crammed parking. There's like a 5-lane highway next door where people aren't crashing every 3 seconds, like are working with each other. Like, when you look at like the like symbiotic existence of the world with how many people we have and all of our challenges, and you look at how little goes wrong.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at it from that perspective, like the glass half full or half empty, when you
It's
look
crazy,
at it like
yeah.
that, it's like when you go, huh. So yeah, on social media, when you can find out everything back, think about this. We as humans have never had the opportunity like we do now to know what goes wrong every single part of the day in every single part of the world. What we used to do was that, holy shit, a tiger is coming, need to knife this motherfucker.
We need to survive,
right?
yeah.
Like, as in, like, we need to take this lion down. You know, this tiger or tigress, like, we don't know what it is. It could be a lion tiger, a liger, but that was our immediate thing. When there was the, you know, so that's the double-edged sword of social media, is that we, as a human being, the amount you consume of what's going on in the world today, right now, you never would have known.
Yeah.
You never would have known. We never had to compute that much information. And so, but what gives me hope, I think, is when you do go to those, when you go down to the beach and you see the reality is there's people that care.
Yeah.
You see reality, you know, in those tough times that we talked about earlier, that people come together. I go on stage and see thousands of people in the crowd tightly packed together when everything could go wrong and everything goes right. So I see a lot of hope in the reality, and that's what we need to watch with like social media. Is it's very easy, and even I feel it some days when you see everything going on and you're like,
holy shit.
But there was a time when people were bombing each other recently in the world history, when people were bombing each other, when my great grandfather on my Dutch side was hiding people.
Wow.
And he got killed for it, you know. In the end, when he got found out, he was a dentist for the Nazis, and he was hiding an American pilot and a Jewish family, and and he died doing what he thought was right.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a time when people
where that was happening, and like
happening, and you're telling me that wouldn't have felt like that. That would have felt like the end of the world.
Exactly.
Like there's whole families, there's millions of people getting put into detention camps. You know, millions of people being murdered in cold blood for no reason. People trying to help them getting murdered for it. Planes dropping bombs. Like, I'm saying, like, that, like, we aren't there.
Exactly.
Like, as in, we aren't there, and we've been there, and people fix that.
Exactly.
Like, that's why we should have hope, is because we've been in some pretty nuts situations, and I think as a young generation with our retention of what has just happened in the world history, it's easy to forget. It's easy to forget that that's what we've come through as human beings, and so we should be very protective of our freedoms. We should not give our freedoms away, and we should be alert in that sense, because we have it. It's what we have in abundance that is easy to be leisurely with, and we have a heck of a lot of freedom right now, and that's why I'm hopeful, because we have a lot more freedom than what people had, and people still managed to make things better back in the day. So that's what we need to remember. Is that's where we can look at our history and be like, so let's not have it go there. Let's be a little smarter.
Exactly. All right, let's lighten it up.
Sorry.
Ben Fullerton and my very good mate Xavier.
Okay. Hey boys.
We need a hair and mow routine. What is the routine? How do you keep looking so fresh?
So, it's a good question, boys. Where do I start?
You should just ask me.
Okay, yeah, I know. I was gonna say, why aren't you asking him? Like, he's got. I think the filthier the better. I think that's something like it just needs to be. It needs to be filthy. Is like how like fundamentally, like a good mustache should like make certain people shiver. Like 9 out of 10 people that walk past should be like, that is disgusting. That's one thing. Like, it should be formidable if you can, you know, not neat, formidable. Like, I got like a mustache trim when I was in LA because I was getting a barbershop shave waiting for a flight, and like I got it like, and the guy just gave me like a very like Hispanic Mexican mustache, and I wasn't vibey at all. So like I got nothing against it, but it just wasn't for me. So I got the worst. Like, this is what I do. Like, it grows and I do this.
And it works.
And then when it's getting too long here, I get scissors and I do this. I just like chop just here. And if I'm going on a big performance, sometimes I'll get like, can't believe I'm going to say this.
What is
wax? I got given
That's
wax.
fine.
I got given wax at like, I got given wax at Blues Fest in 2018. Like, they had like a care package they gave you backstage as an artist. And so I've still got this wax because it's like too much. You don't need it. But on occasion, I wax it up, but I'm talking like every third blue moon, because as you often see from video footage, my mow is all over the place. So I just think keep it filthy is my advice on mustache. Grow it out, keep it filthy.
Alicia asked the question, what did you want to do when you finished school? But we covered it. But shout out Alicia, reaching out. Heaps on your relationship status. We'll keep that anonymous. Mitch Davies, we'll end it on this one. Actually, no, we'll end it. I got to ask you a question I ask everyone. But Mitch Davies says, best tip for mastering the guitar.
Best tip?
Yeah.
Oh. You're asking the wrong fella. I think you're asking the wrong guy, because I'm still because I'm self-taught. I never had lessons. I play incredibly incorrectly, like on like a fundamental on like a how you should play guitar.
Mm-hmm.
I don't play guitar like that.
Yeah.
So like I don't play bar chords. Like, get that through your head. Like, I don't play bar chords. Like, so like I'm not the person to ask about mastering guitar.
Just give it a crack then.
Oh, I'd say go with what you feel, man. No, truly go with what you feel.
Do you know how loud that's gonna be?
Is that gonna be really loud? Sorry.
You just give me more work to do after. It's fine.
I just think like practice. I think hours count. Like, I think that's like, I would play on the street, busking, while I'm prepared with songs that weren't really finished. I would do that all the time, and you start to get it in like your reflexology. You start to feel, and I think that's like, I think there was a quote I read, and this is what I'll leave you on, is that like I saw from I believe a bass player. It was like 20% is the note you play, and 80% is how, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's what counts. Like, I play a lot of like Hands I Can Hold is a 2-chord song. It's kind of like an F shape, and it's kind of a C. I don't really know, because I don't know how to read music. Don't know how, if I was trying to tell you how to play my songs, don't know how to tell you. But it's like an F and a C. Like, that's the 2 easiest chords you can play. Standard tuning, no capo. That's Hands I Can Hold, the whole song on loop.
Yeah.
So I think it's not how well you play the guitar. It's not how well you play it or how professionally you play the guitar. It's just how, if you're feeling it when you're playing it. There, that's what I'd say.
Ziggy Alberts.
What's your question for me? You said you have one more.
Oh, right. I have a playlist. This is a new thing.
Yes.
I need 3 songs quick fire off the top of your head that gets thrown in the playlist. It's called Sounds Like Parry Talks.
Sounds Like Parry Talks. Okay, I'm gonna say Rome by Dermot Kennedy. It's like a kind of, it's really Irish, I'd say, for him. Like, he's an Irish artist, obviously, but I think it kind of draws on his Irish roots. So I'd say Rome by Dermot Kennedy. Borders by Nathan Ball. He's a buddy of mine that was on tour, and he just had a song called Borders come out that, you know, nearly made me cry sitting there listening to it the first time, because he's played it live a lot. But he's just Nathan Ball. Yeah, he's an amazing UK artist. And third, give me a second.
Give us an R&B classic.
An R&B classic. Oh goodness. What can I give you for a third song? You know what? I don't want to give you
2. That's it.
Okay, what's that? No, I want to give you the one that comes to mind. The one that comes to mind for me, because like I re-listened to it for the first time in a while. Which you've probably already got it on there, but All Fired Up by Matt Corby.
I don't have it in there, but yeah.
Okay, because that's one for me that just the other day I revisited, and I
wanna know. Oh my god.
All fired up. It's just like it's something. There's something beautiful in music when you just say something so clearly, you know. So that's my 3 songs for Sounds Like Parry Talks.
Done. We did it.
My friend, thank you very much for having me.
Go down to the
Thanks
shows.
to everybody for tuning in to Parry Talks with us.
If you're here this late and I get this episode up before
Friday, is it?
Friday.
Yeah.
And if you find me, I'll be front left
Front left?
at the show. I'll buy you
Yeah.
a beverage. I'll buy you an alcoholic beverage if you find me and quote this interview.
Yes, go find Parry. Thanks everyone for listening in, and thank you, man, for having me. Always a pleasure. Nice to
Boom.
do these long forms.